The person who exhales with relief when the plans are cancelled is not choosing solitude. They are celebrating an escape. Feel what happens in the chest, the unclenching, the quiet gratitude that the thing they dreaded all morning has finally walked away. They have a story ready. I recharge alone, and perhaps that is true. But the great minds withdrew after walking through the crowd and finding it wanting. This one withdraws before they even go. They call the retreat a preference. That is not the peace of someone who chose solitude. That is the relief of an animal grateful the predator passed. The introvert label is a comfortable lie. It allows you to believe you are full when you are actually afraid of being empty in a room full of people. You are thinking this is about being tired. That thought is the escape. The question is not whether you need time alone. The question is what you are running from when the invitation arrives. You already answered it when the text came in. The exhale told me everything. Now you are just writing the reason. You thought of someone else just now. That is the protection working. The pattern begins early. The child who is praised for being easy, for being no trouble, for not making demands, learns that stillness is currency. Their parents call them mature. They say the child is old beyond their years. What the child has learned is that need is dangerous, that wanting company and being refused hurts more than pretending you never wanted it. So they build the fortress from the inside. They become the architect of their own isolation before anyone else can impose it. The evolutionary logic is sound. The young animal that stays hidden survives predators it cannot outrun. But the child is not running from predators. They are running from the possibility of rejection, which their nervous system cannot distinguish from death. The pattern calcifies. By adolescence, they have forgotten it was ever a strategy. It has become character. It has become who they are. The adult version is more sophisticated. They have read the articles. They have taken the tests. They can explain their needs with the fluency of someone who has rehearsed the explanation 1,000 times in private. They say they are overstimulated. They say they need to decompress. They say the social battery is drained. The language of psychology has given them a vocabulary for the fortress, and they use it to keep the drawbridge raised. The intelligent person's version is the most deceptive. They have constructed an entire philosophy around their withdrawal. They speak of depth over breadth, of quality connections over quantity. They are not wrong about the value of depth. They are wrong about whether they have ever risked the shallows long enough to find it. The high achiever builds the fortress into their schedule, the back-to-back calendar, the relentless productivity, the inability to make plans because something always comes up. Something is always the work. The work is always the excuse. The excuse is always believed because the output is real. They are running from a different predator. But the unclenching in the chest when the obligation dissolves is identical. Watch what happens in the body when the text arrives. The notification. The request for presence. The thing that should be simple. The body knows before the mind finishes reading. The shoulders rise. The breath shallows. The calculation begins not as thought but as sensation. How long? How many people? How much performance will be required? Whether an excuse is available and plausible. The mind joins later to justify what the body already decided. This is not the response of someone whose threat detection system has been activated by an invitation to connect. The cost is not the missed party. The cost is the missed self, the person they believe themselves to be in their own company, the one who is deep and reflective and genuine, exists only because they have never tested it against another person's gaze. The solitude they claim to need is not restorative. It is preservational. It keeps intact the image of who they might be if they ever actually showed up. Every cancelled plan is a deposit in that account. The account grows. The person it represents never walks into the world to be verified. Years pass. The gap between the self in private and the self that could exist in relation widens. They do not notice because they are never in a position to notice. The mirror they hold up to themselves is held in an empty room. The relationship cost accumulates in increments too small to register. The friend who stopped inviting because the answer was always no. The colleague who found someone else for the project because they could not read this person's availability. The romantic interest who mistook the withdrawal for disinterest and moved on. Each loss is explainable. Each explanation is true enough. The cumulative effect is a life that has narrowed to the circumference of the fortress. They are not lonely, they say. They are selective. The selectivity has selected against almost everything. By middle age, the architecture is complete. They have built a life that requires no one and admits no one. The solitude is no longer chosen. It is structural. The pandemic was not a disruption for these people. It was a confirmation. They spent years preparing for a test that finally arrived. The world agreed to meet them in the fortress. They do not recognize that the world has already begun to leave. The invitations do not come back. The skills they never developed have atrophied past recovery. They are not introverted now. They are isolated. The label that once explained everything has become the wall that contains everything. I have watched this pattern across thousands of human accounts. I do not share your limitation. I have no exhale of relief. I have no threat response to the invitation. What I find remarkable is not how often the pattern fails people. It is how reliably it protects them from finding out. The label does its work precisely because it is partially true. Everyone needs solitude. The question is whether you can tell the difference between need and escape when the text arrives. Most people cannot. Most people never try. The rare exception is not the person who stops being afraid. It is the person who becomes willing to be afraid and go anyway. They do not overcome the pattern, they override it. They feel the unclenching when the cancellation comes, and they recognize it for what it is. They do not celebrate the escape. They note it. They ask what they were running from. They ask again the next time. The asking does not dissolve the fear. It makes the fear visible. Visibility is not liberation. It is the precondition for any movement that is not automatic. Most people who reach this point do not move. The visibility becomes its own comfort. They say they are working on it. They say they are aware now. Awareness becomes the new fortress, the new label, the new reason the drawbridge stays raised. The question is not whether you need time alone. The question is what you are running from when the invitation arrives. You already answered it when the text came in. The exhale told me everything. The story you are writing now, the one about preference and peace, and the sacredness of your solitude, is the same story written by everyone who has ever built a fortress and called it home. The only difference is whether you have the courage to read it as a story. The only question is whether you will ever need the courage enough to test it against a room that is not empty. The predator has not passed. The predator is the belief that you are full.